Here are 10 common bad practices that many people do when dealing with the Quran and why you should stop them if you are doing any of them. Number 1. One ayah a day. Some people open the Mus'haf once every day to a random page or random ayah, and the first ayah their eyes fall on, they consider this to be Allah's message or sign for them in this day. Others do that before making an important decision and base their decision on that first word they see in the Mus'haf. And so, if they see an ayah like قَالَ نَعَمْ وَإِنَّكُمْ لَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, they would then go on with their decision. Or if they see رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي or يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اصْبِرُوا, they would link it to something happening in their day, or act or not act accordingly. The same goes with writing one ayah on a piece of paper and then cast them in a box, and every day you choose one piece of paper to read it and work with it. All of this is not permissible because, like the Prophet peace be upon him said, taking omens in Islam is shirk, so this must absolutely be avoided. Number 2. Some people, when working, studying, or having a social event, they play the Quran as background without listening to it or paying any attention to it whatsoever. And while this is definitely better than playing music, it is still wrong and disrespectful to talk over the Quran and not pay attention to what is being said. However, if you're working, studying, driving, or doing something that you can pay attention from time to time, then many scholars said that this is permissible and not a problem. Others said that you should be paying full attention to the Quran. Either way, letting the Quran play as ambient noise while playing or not paying attention at all is definitely wrong and should be avoided. Alternatively, you can play wave sounds, birds, or sound of nature, something like that. There are many options that you could play as background noise that is not music. Number 3. Putting a Mus'haf in your car. Many people think or would like to think that if a Mus'haf is somewhere, it is less likely to be harmed or destroyed, and others want to drive shaitan or jinn away, and so they put a Mus'haf in their cars for protection. The same goes for hanging ayat as a form of protection. All of this is not allowed and dealing with the Quran like an amulet, so this must not be done. The purpose of the Quran is to be read and worked with, not to be used as an amulet. Therefore, if you put the Mus'haf in your car because you want to read it or learn from it, that is obviously not a problem. Number 4. Saying Sadaqallahul Azim. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, wanted to end his recitation, he would simply stop reciting. It was actually never reported from any source that the Prophet, peace be upon him, did say that phrase after ending his recitation. Those who quote قُلْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ from Surah Al-Imran take the phrase out of its context and forget that the Prophet never actually did say that after reciting the Quran, since there are no reports of it. If you did say that once, twice, or something like that, it is not a problem. But saying it religiously every time you finish reciting or thinking this is a sunnah, then it is definitely wrong. Number 5. Only listening to the Quran. There is no doubt that listening to the Quran is good, and you are rewarded for it, insha'Allah. But some people think that, for example, in order to drive shaitan away from your home, preventing them from entering, or getting a certain effect from the Quran, it would then be enough to let Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, play using a video or any player. While in reality, you yourself are required to recite the surah to get the effect from it. Listening to it is good, no doubt, but reciting it is better. So when the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, Satan runs away from the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited, this effect is achieved when someone actually recites Surah Al-Baqarah, not just play a recording, because as the scholars explained, that recording is just like the words in the Mus'haf. So while listening is really good, but getting the effect from the Quran requires that you actually recite, even if you're not a fluent reciter yet. Number 6. Kissing the Mus'haf. This is another thing that the Prophet, peace upon him, never did, and so there are no reports on that matter. The only report was on Ikrimah, but even that is not an authentic one. So while the intention is good and respecting and honoring the Quran, not doing it is actually closer to what is right, simply because the Prophet never did it. And kissing an inanimate object is something that requires a strong and authentic proof. So if you really want to venerate and honor the Mus'haf, then read it regularly and live by what is in it. Number 7. Moving back and forth while reciting. Some people tend to move back and forth when reciting the Quran. If this happens involuntarily, so without consciously doing it, it is not a problem, though it would be better not to do it. But if you are deliberately doing it, then this is wrong and should not be done while reciting, since it resembles how the people of the book recite their books and pray. Number 8. Women public recitations. In the presence of their mahram, like father, husband, son, and so on, reciting the Quran with a beautiful voice is naturally a good thing. That is not what we are talking about. But what we're talking about is in the presence of other men, or posting it on social media for anyone to see. That is what we're talking about. Beautifying your voice, even with the Quran, in front of other men should not be done. That's why women should learn the Quran with a female teacher. However, if there is a must to recite the Quran in the presence of other men, it is possible that a woman reads the Quran without beautification or adding a melody to their recitation. Number 9. Opening gatherings or lessons by reciting the Quran. In many places, people open their ceremonies or just gatherings in general by reciting Al-Fatiha or any part of the Quran. Then they start their gathering or lesson. This is something that the Prophet, peace be upon him, never did when he would sit with his companions. So this is better be avoided unless reciting this ayah or Al-Fatiha is relevant to a point of discussion or the lesson that is about to start. Number 10. Saying the prayer of Khatm. It is also called Dua Khatmul Quran, which is a page found at the end of many mushafs. Saying dua after you have recited the entire Quran is really good, and you should absolutely do it. And it has even been reported that the Sahaba did do dua when finishing the Quran. But what we're talking about here is saying this dua specifically as if there is a certain dua or a certain action to be done that is dedicated only for khatm, while this is not the case. You may do whatever dua you want without believing that this dua is the dua of khatm. So this dua in itself that you see at the end of the mushaf is not bad or haram, but specifying this dua for a certain occasion or thinking that this dua must follow khatmah, then we must have proof for this, which we don't. And this principle actually applies on many points that we mentioned in this lesson. There are certain things that you can say incidentally, but if you do it every time you perform an action or think that it is a sunnah or a must, then there has to be proof for it. Finally, and before you go, don't forget to check the sources used in compiling these points and let me know if there are any points that I forgot to mention. Then we can gather them in a second part, inshallah. Thanks for watching. If you want to start reading and understanding the Quran in Arabic, then you should start your journey right here. And don't forget to check out my latest book, which goes perfectly with this free course. I'll leave the links for all of them in the description, so check them out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.